Hello there. Welcome to the Light Story Club. Settle in and find a comfy spot to relax. Before we get to the story, I would love to know your favorite myths and monsters. Comment where in the world you are and let's begin the story. Long ago, before the thunder roared and the skies answered to a king, a small cry echoed deep beneath the roots of Mount Ida. It was not the cry of a god, not yet, but a newborn, wrapped in swaddling cloth spun by fate, whose future lay heavy with lightning. Zeus had just been born. The sky had wept in silence that night. His mother, Rhea, had birthed him in secrecy, far from the gaze of Cronus, the Titan father who feared his children more than he loved them. One by one, he had swallowed them: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, his hunger for control greater than his instinct to protect. Rhea's heart could bear no more. So when Zeus was born, she fled under starlight and whispers, cradling the godling in her arms, his breath warm against her chest. The cave was hidden by wild thyme and lavender, masked by the thick curls of ivy and the scent of wet stone. Within, shadows played against the walls like old spirits, but the air pulsed with safety. It was here, deep in the earth's embrace, that Rhea placed her son, wrapped not just in cloth, but in hope. The nymph Amalthea became his nurse. She was no ordinary creature. Her hair shimmered like river reeds in sunlight, and her voice hummed with the lullabies of earth itself. She brought him goat's milk and honeycomb, soft fruits mashed with herbs, and songs carried from winds that had once whispered to the stars. Every day, Amalthea rocked the child while outside, the curettes, young warrior spirits loyal to Rhea, danced and clashed their bronze shields together to mask his cries. They stomped in circles, shouting ancient chants, rattling the world so Cronus would hear only echoes, never the sound of his last son drawing breath. And so, Zeus grew. He learned to giggle before he could speak, his laughter like sparks catching firewood. He played with stones and chased shadows that danced on cave walls. The goats would nuzzle him, and he'd grip their horns in his tiny hands, gurgling with joy. At night, he would dream of open skies, of thunder rolling far above, though he did not yet understand what the dreams meant. Amalthea would sing of the heavens to him. "One day, the sky will bow for you, little one," she murmured. "But first, you must grow strong, like the oaks above us, deep-rooted and patient." Sometimes Rhea would return. Always in disguise, cloaked and veiled, she came with gifts carved from sacred wood, with prayers written in wind, and eyes full of love and fear. She would hold him and weep softly, whispering names he did not know: "Your sisters, your brothers. One day, you will set them free." The words made no sense to Zeus then, but their rhythm nestled into his heart. Years passed. The cave became a kingdom for the young god. He built forts from rocks, stacked shells like towers, and made crowns of woven grass. He listened to Amalthea's tales of stars and titans, of wars before time, of the golden ages and the quiet ages that came after. She never said his father's name, but the weight of it hovered in the corners of her voice. Zeus grew tall. His eyes became brighter, like pieces of sky. His strength surprised even the goats who once let him ride them. Now he could lift them off the ground in play. He ran faster than the winds outside, could climb the rock walls of his cave, and leap down like a springing deer. The mountain loved him. The earth knew him. The sky, though far, began to feel like home. Then one night, while watching the stars glitter through a crack in the ceiling, Zeus asked Amalthea, "Why do I live in a cave?" The nymph paused. She looked at him long, then answered, "Because you are meant to be hidden, until you are no longer small. And when I'm no longer small, then the world will hear your name." He didn't ask more. But in the days that followed, he began to test his limits. He climbed higher, ran farther, through rocks that broke through trees. He challenged the wind, shouted into the storm, and waited for the echo to come back. The echo began to speak with him. Sometimes, it sounded like thunder. Amalthea saw it too, the change in his step, the light in his hands. Once, when Zeus grew angry over a thorn in his foot, the clouds outside trembled. She hid her worry behind a smile, but the truth settled into her bones. The boy would not remain hidden forever. One morning, Zeus awoke from a dream so vivid he thought it had happened. In it, he stood on the edge of a golden field. A giant loomed before him, Cronus, with fire in his eyes and shadows in his mouth. But Zeus was not afraid. In the dream, he had held a lightning bolt, glowing with light that came from within. He told Amalthea. She listened silently, brushing his hair with fingers that trembled only slightly. "What does it mean?" he asked. "It means," she said gently, "you are beginning to remember who you are." And so the cave, which had been cradle and castle, began to feel smaller. The sky called louder. And the boy who would be king of gods stared out through the opening in the mountain and felt, for the first time, the pull of destiny like wind at his back. The winds shifted the day Zeus stepped beyond the mouth of the cave. It was early morning, and the mountain air held a sweet dampness that spoke of dew and wildflowers. The grasses were still touched with moonlight, and the shadows between the rocks stretched long like sleeping giants. Zeus stood at the threshold, his hand pressed against the stone wall, staring out at the forest that sloped down into the valley. He was older now. No longer the wobbling child who giggled at goats and played with stones, but a youth of lean strength and quick eyes, his hair wild like the wind he so often chased. The cave had grown too small. Amalthea, though always kind, had begun to step back, watching him more than guiding him, her face filled with quiet reverence and quieter worry. "You can go," she had told him that morning. "You've always been meant to." So he did. The ground beneath his feet felt different beyond the cave, less familiar, more alive. He walked past the ivy-draped entrance and into a world that whispered in new voices. Trees rustled above with old secrets, and birds glanced at him, pausing in their songs. The mountain seemed to hold its breath. Zeus wandered for hours. The sky was bright and clear, and he raced the wind across ridges and through groves of olive and pine. He found rivers that sang like nymphs and startled deer who bounded away with grace. Every time he paused, he touched the earth gently, reverently, and felt it hum beneath his fingertips. He didn't know where he was going, only that he needed to go. By midday, the sun grew hot, and Zeus sat beneath a twisted olive tree to rest. He drank from a spring that bubbled nearby and tore wild figs from a branch, their juice sticky and sweet. As he sat there, a strange sound broke through the stillness, a low, rolling growl, like a giant turning in his sleep. Thunder. Zeus looked up. The once blue sky had begun to darken at the edges. Clouds gathered with unsettling speed, swirling like a spiral of smoke. The air thickened, heavy with something old. Zeus stood, wiping his hands on his tunic, heart pounding. Not with fear, but with something deeper. Recognition. Then came the wind. It tore through the trees, bending them low, throwing leaves into the sky like frightened birds. The ground trembled, and lightning flashed across the sky in jagged silver cracks. Rain began to fall, light at first, then sudden and hard, drumming against the earth like 1,000 drums. Zeus didn't run. He stood still, his arms slightly outstretched, face turned upward, rain streaking down his cheeks like tears he didn't know he'd been holding. The storm wasn't just weather. It was something else. Something his. The wind curled around him, circling like a companion. The thunder rolled, and he felt it echo inside his chest. A bolt of lightning struck a tree just beyond the clearing, and for a moment, the world split open in brilliant white. Zeus didn't flinch. He stepped forward. And the storm answered. The rain slowed. The wind calmed. The clouds thinned, then scattered. It was as if the sky had been watching and was now satisfied. Zeus looked down at his hands. They were trembling, but not from cold. His fingertips buzzed. A warmth glowed deep in his belly, rising like fire, soft and slow. He didn't understand it. Not fully. But part of him knew, something inside him had awakened. When he returned to the cave that evening, soaked and wide-eyed, Amalthea was waiting. "You felt it," she said simply, wrapping a dry cloth around his shoulders. Zeus nodded. "It knew me. The storm, it knew me." "No," she said, brushing a wet curl from his forehead. "You knew it." In the days that followed, Zeus returned again and again to the hills beyond the cave. He practiced running faster, climbing higher, pushing his strength and breath to the edge. He would find clearings and raise his hands to the sky, calling not with words, but with will. Sometimes clouds would stir. Sometimes wind would dance. And sometimes, when his heart beat with just the right rhythm, thunder would roll far in the distance. One day, Amalthea brought him a gift. It was a wooden staff, carved from olive root, etched with spiral patterns that pulsed faintly when he touched it. "This was made by your mother," she said. "A guide, not a weapon. For now." Zeus took it with reverence. The wood felt alive. That night, he stood outside the cave, staff in hand, and watched the stars shimmer. He imagined them not as far-off lights, but as places, kingdoms above the clouds. He thought of the dream again, the one with Cronus and the lightning bolt. He didn't feel afraid. "Who am I?" he asked the sky. It did not answer in words. But a wind stirred the grass at his feet, soft and curling, like fingers through hair. And in the sky, a single streak of silver light flashed silently, then vanished. He went to bed smiling. But deep in the black sky, beyond mortal sight, Cronus stirred. The Titan's dreams twisted and darkened, filled with the taste of thunder. He saw a boy with sky-colored eyes, a staff of olive, a storm in his hands. And he woke with a start, his heart thundering. Somewhere, a child he had meant to forget was beginning to remember. The days that followed the storm seemed to pass slower than before. Zeus awoke each morning with the same strange fire in his chest, the same restlessness that no run through the mountain paths could fully quiet. Something was changing, not just in him, but around him. Amalthea noticed it, too. "You are growing beyond this mountain," she said as she brewed a tea of honey and thyme. "The trees whisper of it. Even the stones feel your footsteps." Zeus looked down at his bare feet, muddy from a morning of climbing cliffs and jumping riverbeds. "Do the stones speak to everyone?" "Not to everyone," she said, handing him the cup. "Only to those they remember." He sipped the tea. "And they remember me. More and more each day." Zeus didn't quite know what that meant, but he liked the sound of it. Later that afternoon, while walking the rim of a deep ravine, he found a path he hadn't noticed before, narrow, winding down into a place the light seemed to avoid. It wasn't the darkness that drew him, but something beneath it. A pull, soft and steady, like the tide tugging at the shore. He followed it. The air grew cool as he descended, damp and full of echoes. Moss carpeted the stone, and the roots of ancient trees stretched over the walls like sleeping serpents. The deeper he went, the quieter the world became, until even his footsteps felt muffled. Then he heard it. A hum. Low and endless, like the vibration of the world itself. It wasn't a sound made by lips or breath, it was the voice of something deeper. Something older. He pressed his hand to the wall, and it spoke. Not in language, but in feeling. A warmth spread from the rock into his palm, up his arm, into his chest. He saw visions, not with his eyes, but in his mind, swirling shadows, stars forming and falling, a throne made of sky. And at the center of it all, a heart huge, golden, beating not with blood, but with will. Zeus stumbled back. The hum faded. Above him, the wind stirred. He climbed out of the ravine quickly, heart pounding, the image of the golden heart still bright behind his eyes. When he returned to the cave, Amalthea was waiting, seated by the fire as if she had known he would return shaken. "You heard her, didn't you?" she asked softly. "Who?" Zeus breathed, lowering himself beside her. "Gaia. The earth." Amalthea nodded. "She remembers you, too." They sat in silence, save for the crackling of the fire. Zeus stared into the flames, feeling the hum of the ravine still thrumming beneath his skin. "She showed me something," he said. "A throne in the sky, and a heart. It was bright, alive." Amalthea said nothing for a long time. Then, finally, she whispered, "That throne is meant for you. One day." Zeus turned to her. "Why me?" "Because you are the storm," she said. "And the sky must answer to its own voice." He didn't understand. Not fully. But the warmth of Gaia's memory remained with him, as did the shape of that golden heart. In the days that followed, strange things began to happen. When Zeus walked by the river, the waters would rise to greet him, forming tiny spirals before smoothing again. Birds followed him from tree to tree, cawing songs in unfamiliar rhythms. Even the trees leaned slightly toward his path, branches creaking gently, like bowing. One morning, he touched the trunk of an ancient oak and felt it stir. Not visibly, but inside. It was as though something old and slow had blinked awake. "They're beginning to remember," Amalthea said. "Remember what?" "That you are not just of the sky," she replied. "You are of the world." That evening, as a storm gathered on the horizon, Zeus stood atop a cliff that overlooked the sea. The clouds pulsed with electric light, and the wind roared through the valley like a chorus of unseen voices. He raised his arms, and the lightning answered, not to frighten, not to destroy, but to greet. The storm knew him, and for the first time, he felt it flow through him, not as something foreign, but as something his. The wind rushed past his ears, and he laughed, not out of joy or pride, but out of sheer understanding. He was not just born of gods. He was meant for something more. And far below, in the deeps of the earth, Gaia hummed again, smiling. The world had begun to shift. It was near the end of summer when the owl first came. Zeus was sitting by a shallow stream, watching minnows flicker like silver sparks in the water, when he heard the quiet rustle of wings. It wasn't the hurried flutter of a sparrow or the slow beat of an eagle, it was measured, rhythmic, as if the air made room for the creature rather than resisted it. He looked up. An owl, ash-gray and wide-eyed, perched on the branch above him. It stared directly at him. Not curiously, not cautiously, knowingly. Zeus stared back, heart still. The owl did not move. Neither did he. After a long moment, it blinked once, then opened its wings and soared away. Not deeper into the forest, but toward a narrow path that curved up the mountainside like a scar in the earth. Zeus watched until it vanished behind the ridge. He stood. He wasn't sure why, but he followed. The path was narrow and steep, hemmed in by jagged rocks and tall grass that whispered as he passed. The climb was long, longer than any he had taken before, and the air grew thinner, cooler. The sky seemed closer here, like it might lean down and press its forehead to the earth. At the top, there was nothing but a smooth slab of stone and the wind. Then he saw it. A single olive tree, ancient and gnarled, growing sideways from the cliff wall. And beneath its roots, half buried in moss and mist, a small archway carved into the mountain face. The owl waited there. When Zeus approached, it turned and disappeared into the shadows beyond the arch. He ducked beneath the roots and stepped inside. The cave was narrow and low at first, then opened into a tall chamber, its walls flickering with the soft glow of unseen torches. Carvings lined the stone, symbols, faces, stars. They moved when he didn't look directly at them. A scent like crushed herbs and salt hung in the air. A figure stood in the center. She was cloaked in deep green, her face mostly hidden, her hair streaked with silver and gold like sunlight through a forest canopy. Her voice came not from her mouth but from the air itself, soft, steady, and ancient. "Child of Rhea, son of the storm." Zeus's breath caught. "Who are you?" "I am the oracle, the one who remembers what others have forgotten." He stepped closer. "Do you know me?" "I have always known you." "Then tell me," Zeus said. "Why was I hidden? Why do I feel like there's more I'm meant to be?" The oracle turned. Her face, though half-shadowed, was calm and ageless. "Because your father fears what you will become." Zeus's heart twisted. Cronus. The name felt bitter on his tongue, like something he had swallowed wrong. "He devoured your kin," the oracle said, "to keep his throne from being overturned. But fate does not bend for fear." "What must I do?" he asked, his voice more whisper than command. The oracle walked slowly to the wall and traced a spiral with one finger. The stone glowed faintly. "You must learn the 3 truths," she said. 3. One from the sky, one from the earth, and one from within. "And then," she said, "you will be ready." "For what?" "To return." Zeus felt the word anchor in his bones. Return. To where? To whom? He didn't ask. He simply nodded. The oracle raised her hand. A wind stirred the torches, and their light sharpened. From her cloak, she pulled a small vial of liquid, thick and golden, like sunlight melted into glass. "This," she said, "was drawn from the roots of Olympus itself. Drink it when the time comes, and the world will shift." Zeus took it, the vial warm in his palm. The oracle's voice softened. "You are not yet what you will be, but already the world feels your steps." Then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, the torches dimmed, and the chamber was empty. The owl led him back down the mountain in silence. When he reached the bottom, he looked back, but the path was gone. Only the trees remained. That night, he sat beside Amalthea beneath the stars. "I met someone today," he said quietly. She looked at him with a knowing gaze. "I wondered when you'd find her." She said, "I need to learn 3 truths. One from the sky, one from the earth, one from within." Amalthea nodded. "And you will. Do you know what they are?" "No," she said. "Because they aren't given. They're earned." Zeus sat with that thought. Above them, the stars wheeled slowly, the same way they had since before his birth. But tonight, they felt closer, brighter, as though they, too, were waiting for him to return. The morning after the oracle's message, Zeus awoke with his thoughts heavy and clear, like the sky before a storm. He had dreamed of wings, great, endless wings stretching across the sky, dark enough to block out the sun. When he reached toward them, they shattered into feathers, each one whispering a word he couldn't quite catch. When he opened his eyes, he could still feel the wind from the dream brushing his face. He rose before Amalthea stirred and walked beyond the goat paths, past the familiar glades and rivers, to a ledge where the world opened up like a great bowl. Below him, the forests rolled down into hills and the sea shimmered beyond them, cradling the horizon in its endless arms. Above him, the sky was vast and clean, dotted with gulls and streaks of thin cloud. "I'm ready," he whispered, and though he spoke softly, the wind answered. It rose in a slow spiral, wrapping around his shoulders and tousling his hair. He stood still, staff in hand, waiting for the feeling to settle into his bones. The first truth is of the sky, the oracle had said. And Zeus knew, if the sky was his birthright, then it must know him, must test him, must speak its truth only if he was willing to listen. So he climbed. He scaled the cliffs above the ledge, climbing where no trail led, over jagged stone slick with morning dew. Higher and higher he went, until the air thinned and the clouds pressed close. He climbed until even the birds dared not follow. He reached a place where no tree grew and no sound echoed. A plateau of pale stone, cracked and open to the full embrace of the heavens. And there, waiting, stood the eagle. It was enormous, its wings spread wider than a hut, its feathers gleaming gold at the edges. Its eyes were fierce, ancient, and filled with a deep recognition. It did not move when Zeus approached, only watched. Zeus took a breath and stepped forward. "You know who I am." The eagle tilted its head. Then, with a screech that split the silence, it launched into the air. Zeus barely had time to react before a gust of wind knocked him to his knees. Dust swirled, and clouds parted. The eagle soared high, then circled back. It dove. Zeus rolled just in time, the creature's talons slicing the ground where he'd stood. The eagle rose again, turning in a wide arc. It was testing him. Zeus stood, gripping his staff, eyes sharp. The eagle dived again, and this time Zeus didn't move. He waited, watched the curve of its body, the shadow it cast. At the last moment, he jumped aside and swung the staff. The eagle veered off with a shriek, circling again. The sky rumbled, not with thunder, but with anticipation. Again and again, the eagle dove, and Zeus danced just beyond its reach. His limbs ached. His breath came ragged. But each time, he moved faster, more surely. Until finally, as the eagle swept low once more, Zeus leapt not away, but toward it. He caught hold of a talon. The eagle screeched in surprise and beat its wings, rising fast into the clouds. Zeus clung tightly, the wind roaring in his ears, the world falling away beneath him. Higher and higher they climbed, past the clouds, into a place where the air shimmered and the stars could be seen even in daylight. And then, silence. The eagle leveled its flight and soared across a sea of sky. Zeus, now perched between its shoulders, looked out in wonder. He could see the curve of the earth below, the rivers threading like veins, the mountains like wrinkles in time. The eagle spoke not with words, but with thought, carried on the wind. "The sky is not yours to claim. It is yours to carry." Zeus blinked. The eagle's voice filled his mind, ancient and resonant. To rule the sky is not to own it. It is to become part of its balance. You must bend like wind, strike like lightning, and shelter like clouds. Only then will it answer to you. Zeus closed his eyes, letting the words settle inside him. He felt the weight of them, not heavy, but grounding. He opened his eyes and nodded. The eagle circled once more, then descended. When it touched down on the plateau, Zeus slid from its back and knelt. The eagle bent its head, pressing its beak to his forehead. A spark passed between them. And in that moment, Zeus saw the first truth of sky, that strength was not in domination, but in harmony. That to rise, one must also learn when to yield. That lightning obeyed only those who listened to the silence first. When Zeus descended from the mountain, the wind parted the grass before his feet. The clouds shifted gently above, following his pace. Amalthea met him at the edge of the forest. "You heard it," she said. Zeus nodded, eyes bright. "I know the first truth," he said. "The sky is not a crown. It's a burden. And a promise." She smiled. "Good. You're ready for the second." He glanced to the earth, to the roots and rocks below. "I need to go deeper," he whispered. And somewhere below, Gaia stirred. The earth was quiet that morning, so quiet it felt like the entire mountain was holding its breath. Even the usual breeze through the trees had stilled. The birds didn't sing. The air hung heavy, expectant. Zeus stood at the entrance of the cave where he and Amalthea had spent many seasons. His hands were coated in dust. He had packed food, water, and a torch wrapped in oils, though he suspected fire would be little use where he was going. Amalthea stood beside him, her expression solemn. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. "I have to be," Zeus replied. She placed a warm hand on his shoulder. "The earth does not give up her truths easily. She will test your patience. She will press into your thoughts. You must not fight her. You must listen." He nodded. Then he stepped into the cave, the shadows swallowing him whole. The path into the earth wound narrow and steep. At first, it was familiar, the same cave systems he had explored in his childhood, caverns full of dripping water and stones that echoed with his footsteps. But this time, he did not stop. He went deeper. Days passed. Or maybe it was only hours. In the belly of the mountain, time forgot how to count. The walls changed. They grew smooth and warm to the touch, like something alive. The air became thick and damp, pulsing with the slow rhythm of something vast and breathing. Zeus pressed on. He came to a chamber of stone pillars, each one taller than 10 men and etched with spirals and patterns that made his head ache to look at. The silence here was immense, not empty, but full of things waiting to be heard. He knelt and placed both hands flat to the ground. "I'm here," he said aloud, though the sound vanished instantly. Nothing answered. He closed his eyes and focused. He thought of the trees above, of the moss under his feet as a child, of the soil Amalthea used to mix with herbs to heal wounds. He thought of the way Gaia had spoken to him before, without words, but with warmth. And slowly, he felt it. A hum. It started deep in the floor and moved up through his palms, into his arms, spreading through his chest until it settled in his heart. Not a sound, but a vibration, like the heartbeat of the world. And then came the voice. Low and endless. As old as the bones of the earth. "You seek the truth of stone." Zeus remained still. "You rise like wind, but you must also know how to root." He breathed in, feeling the damp earth scent fill his lungs. What grows without grounding will be torn away. What rises without knowing what it rises from will fall. The ground beneath him shifted slightly. From the center of the chamber, a mound rose, slowly blooming into a figure, half rock, half root, her eyes gleaming like polished amber. Gaia. She stood tall, her form vast but graceful, as if the mountain itself had curled upward into the shape of a woman. "Child of sky," she said aloud now, her voice resonating through the cave walls, "you have come to learn the second truth." Zeus rose to his feet. "I'm ready." Gaia moved toward him, each step slow and seismic. "Then listen." She reached into the earth and drew out a small seed. Simple, brown, smooth. She placed it in his hand. "Tell me what you see," she said. Zeus stared at it. "It's just a seed." Gaia tilted her head. "Is it?" He closed his eyes. He saw roots. Deep and spiraling, pulling water from unseen streams. He saw the seed break open, grow a stem, then leaves, then branches. He saw it reach toward the sky. But more than that, he saw the way the tree connected to everything. The moss that grew on its bark, the worms that moved through its roots, the birds that built nests in its branches. And beneath all of that, the soil itself alive, breathing, aware. When he opened his eyes, his heart felt heavy, not with sadness, but with something deeper. "This is the truth," Gaia said. "Everything is connected. To stand strong, you must know what you stand for. What you are tied to. What will hold you when winds rise and lightning breaks. Zeus nodded slowly. I understand, he said. The sky lifts, but the earth holds. Gaia smiled. Remember that. When storms rage and thrones are claimed, when power calls your name, remember this seed. Even the mightiest tree begins with something small, and nothing grows without being held by the ground. Zeus clutched the seed to his chest. The chamber began to dim. The hum faded. When he opened his eyes again, Gaia was gone. He made his way out of the cave, the path shorter now, like the mountain knew he had earned his way back. When he emerged into the light, the sky had shifted into dusk. The first stars were blinking awake. Amalthea waited near the fire, her eyes glistening. You found it, she said. I did, Zeus replied. He showed her the seed. She touched it with reverence. You're almost ready. Almost, he echoed, then looked toward the sky. I've heard the wind, and I've heard the stone. But now, she nodded. The final truth is the hardest. Zeus looked down at the seed in his palm. And it waits inside me. The days that followed were slow and strange. Zeus was not the same boy who once chased goats across the glade or leapt into the cold mountain stream with a shout of laughter. Something had settled in him, something ancient, still, and vast. The sky no longer roared above him. The earth no longer stirred beneath his feet. Both had spoken, and now they waited, like elders observing a child learning to stand on his own. Only one truth remained, the one within, and Zeus feared it more than the others. He sat in the clearing alone, Amalthea watching from a distance, quietly weaving garlands of dry mountain sage. She had said little since he returned from Gaia's chambers. Her silence was not avoidance, it was trust. She knew this part could not be guided. The truth within could not be taught. It had to be faced. He lay on the grass, staring into the sky, the seed from Gaia still clutched in his hand. He watched as clouds gathered far beyond the mountain peaks, dark and slow-moving. Thunder rumbled in the distance. A storm was coming, but it wasn't the one on the horizon that concerned him. That night, he could not sleep. Dreams twisted around him, thick and tangled. He saw faces, his mother's face, kind and worried, his father's face, dark and laughing. He saw shadows of siblings he had never met. He heard their cries swallowed by hunger, saw Cronus' mouth open wide like a cave, like the sky collapsing inwards. He woke with a gasp, cold sweat clinging to his skin. And then he heard it, the cry. It echoed from deep in the forest. Sharp, desperate, young. He ran. Branches whipped his arms. Roots reached to trip him. The wind howled louder with each step. The cry came again, piercing through the storm winds now beginning to gather. He found her in a hollow by the cliffs. A young eagle chick, fallen from a nest, its wing twisted and limp. Rain began to fall in thick sheets. Zeus lifted the tiny bird carefully, shielding it with his body. Lightning flashed. And suddenly he was not in the forest anymore. He stood in a mirror space. Black sky, black soil, and before him, himself. But not as he was. This Zeus was taller, armored in storm cloud and shadow. His eyes flashed with lightning. His voice rolled like thunder. You think you understand power? The other Zeus asked. You think wisdom and kindness are enough? Zeus stepped back. You're me. I'm what you could become. Zeus looked down. The eagle chick was gone. The ground cracked beneath his feet. You want to rise, said the storm self. But the sky does not grant mercy. The throne you are meant for is not given. It is taken. You must be willing to break, to burn, to devour, as he did. No, Zeus said, breath shaking. I'm not him. Aren't you? Flashes filled the mirror world. Cronus' teeth, mouths wide open, the sound of screaming gods, time grinding in his throat. Zeus fell to his knees. The storm roared louder. But then a pulse. Soft. Steady. From his chest. The seed. It glowed faintly in his palm. Warm. Alive. He pressed it to the ground. From the soil, a tree rose, tall, golden-leaved, crackling faintly with light. The storm self tried to strike it, but the tree did not burn. Lightning shattered around its branches. Wind parted at its trunk. Its roots sank deep into the invisible earth. Zeus stood. "I won't be like him," he said quietly. The storm self's eyes narrowed. "I won't conquer by fear. I'll rise by truth. I've heard the sky. I've heard the earth. Now I know myself. I am not the storm." He stepped forward, into the figure. "I am the calm inside it." The storm self dissolved. And Zeus woke, the eagle chick still in his arms, the storm around him fading. Morning was breaking through the trees. He carried the chick back to Amalthea, who wrapped it gently in cloth and tucked it close to the fire. "You found it," she said softly. He nodded, exhausted but calm. "I saw what I might become. But I chose something else." Amalthea looked at him not as a boy, not even as the child she had raised, but as someone becoming something larger than either of them could name. "Then you're ready," she whispered. Zeus stood tall. The three truths lived within him now. The sky's freedom, the earth's grounding, and his own inner storm understood, faced, and tempered. Far above them, a thundercloud swirled quietly across the sun. The mountain felt different now. Zeus walked its trails with a steady rhythm, as though the stones recognized him, shifting slightly to ease his steps. The sky above did not test him anymore. The clouds followed him like old companions. Trees turned gently as he passed. The birds did not flee. Even the river at the base of the cliffs slowed as if to listen. Three truths now lived within him: sky, earth, and storm. But Amalthea told him there was more to learn still. "Now you must find the others," she said one morning as she prepared roots for salves. "The world is not only gods and mortals. It is full of things forgotten, hidden, waiting. Some love Olympus. Some hate it. All of them matter." Zeus tilted his head. "You mean the spirits?" She smiled. "Spirits. Titans. Nymphs. Shadows. Dreams. Even time has a shape if you look closely. You'll need to know their names before they know yours." He didn't argue. That night, he climbed the eastern ridge and made camp beneath a twisted laurel tree. He placed the eagle chick beside him, its wing now mended, but it refused to leave him. It blinked up at him with golden eyes and settled into his cloak. The fire crackled low, and Zeus began to dream. But this was no ordinary dream. He found himself in a vast, shifting forest, its trees stretching up into darkness, their trunks wider than temples. The leaves whispered in 1,000 languages. Rivers ran backward, then upward. Time was twisted. Light danced like a living thing, slipping between branches. He stepped carefully, staff in hand. A voice rang out, not loud, but clear. Feminine. Ancient. "You've come too late." He turned to see her, a figure cloaked in vines and moonlight. Her hair was long and dark as midnight, her eyes the color of deep roots. "Who are you?" Zeus asked. She did not answer. Instead, she lifted a hand, and the forest around them changed. He saw the past, Titan wars, thrones shattered, gods born and swallowed whole. He saw oceans rising and mountains falling. He saw Cronus carving time into pieces and hiding them away. Then the vision changed. He saw himself older, cloaked in lightning, wielding a great thunderbolt. But he also saw shadows behind him, figures watching, whispering, circling like wolves around a fire. Do you think they will follow you? The woman asked. Do you think your thunder will silence everything? Zeus clenched his jaw. No. But I will listen to them. I will not rule like him. She nodded, approving. You speak well, she said, and her form shimmered. She grew taller, her feet not touching the ground. Then come meet us. Around her, shapes emerged, creatures of mist and memory. A satyr with branches for horns. A river with eyes. A shadow with no face. A fox that spoke in riddles. A flame that remembered its first spark. You call us forgotten, said one. You call us small, said another. But we are the space between your thoughts, said a third. We are the breath before the lightning. They circled him, not threatening, but watchful. Zeus bowed, not in fear, but in respect. I will not forget you, he said. I may rise, but I will not rise alone. The spirits watched him a long moment. Then, slowly, the forest stilled. The woman stepped forward and placed a hand over his heart. You are beginning to become, she whispered. The forest collapsed into wind. Zeus awoke, the fire burned low beside him. The eagle chick nuzzled into his side. And in the morning light, something strange shimmered on the laurel tree, symbols carved into its bark that had not been there the night before. Names. Whispers. Memories. He traced them with his fingers, and they hummed faintly under his touch. The spirits were real. They were watching. And now, they knew his name. The air on Mount Aegaeon shimmered with quiet energy. Zeus had not left the high ridges since his dream in the shifting forest, where he'd met the forgotten spirits and listened to the voices between thoughts. Their whispers still clung to him, strange riddles and riddled truths that would rise and vanish just when he thought he'd understood them. But now, something new stirred. A thin hum, like distant thunder echoing inside the sky's bones. It was not a storm, but something older. Amalthea, Zeus said one morning, what lies beyond the stars? She didn't answer right away. She poured warm water over dried petals and let them steep, watching the steam curl upward. Do you mean above them? She finally asked. Or before them? Zeus tilted his head. Is there a difference? She smiled. You're ready for the Cave of Echoes. That same afternoon, she led him to a forgotten path near the mountain's crown, where moss clung to crumbled pillars and the trees leaned inward, as if hiding something. The entrance was narrow, but the wind moved in and out of it, like breath. You must go alone, Amalthea said. And listen, not to others, but to yourself. He stepped inside. The cave was dark, but not cold. Its walls glowed faintly with silver strands, like veins of memory. Each footstep echoed. Not once, but many times, bouncing back in unfamiliar tones. And then, a voice. Not ahead, not behind, but within. You seek the end, it said. But you are the beginning. Zeus froze. Who are you? I am the voice of what hasn't happened yet. He pressed deeper into the cave, torchlight flickering against the walls. With every step, he saw shadows of moments not yet lived, flashes of the future. A throne of marble and storm. A woman of wisdom born from his head. A war that shook the sky. A brother rising from the sea. A third who walked among the dead. He saw battles. Peace. A mountain named Olympus filled with gods. Laughter. Rage. Celebration. Betrayal. He saw himself old and alone, sitting beneath a fig tree, watching his children argue in circles. Zeus stumbled to his knees. Is this my future? He asked the voice. It is a future, the voice said. But even the gods are made of choices. I don't want to become what he was, Zeus said, anger cracking through him like lightning. Then don't, the voice replied. But understand this, your power is not your greatness. Your choices are. And those will echo louder than thunder. Asterisk asterisk, he sat in the cave for what felt like hours. The visions faded. The voice quieted. But the echo of it all remained. When he emerged, the sky had turned golden. Amalthea waited, her eyes soft with understanding. You saw it? She asked. Zeus nodded. Some of it was beautiful. Some of it, terrible. They often come together, she said gently. He sat beside her. I saw a throne. I saw Olympus. I saw wars and laughter and pain. I saw myself become king. And, she asked, I didn't feel proud. I felt responsible. Amalthea smiled, and for the first time, her expression was not just motherly, it was reverent. Then you've truly begun to grow. That night, Zeus sat awake beneath the stars. Not just watching them, but wondering what came before them, and what might come after. He held Gaia's seed in his palm and whispered to it, I don't want to rule, I want to guide. And far above him, something stirred. A star shifted slightly, as though the sky had heard. The mountain air was sharp, scented with pine and fresh earth. Zeus felt lighter today, as if the echoes from the cave had lifted some unseen weight from his shoulders. His thoughts were clearer, sharper, like the edge of a blade forged by the storm. But the peace was fragile. Amalthea had warned him. Power does not wait, she said, eyes serious beneath her gentle smile. It gathers, like the winds before a storm. Zeus nodded, knowing this truth well. That afternoon, he climbed to a narrow ridge where the sky seemed to stretch forever, the clouds drifting just out of reach. There, a wind blew unlike any other, wild, whispering secrets he could almost catch. He closed his eyes. The wind spoke, not in words, but in feeling. A rush of freedom, a surge of fear, a song of change. Zeus opened his eyes to see figures approaching, others called by the mountain's breath. First came the Boreas, the north wind, cold and sharp as ice. His eyes gleamed with frost, and his voice was the crackle of frozen branches. Zeus, Boreas said, the world shifts. Titans stir beneath the earth. The old powers whisper of return. Then came Notus, the south wind, warm and heavy with rain. She laughed like distant thunder. Change is coming, she said. Even the skies cannot hold back the tide. Eurus, the east wind, arrived next, swift and restless, with eyes like swirling mists. We are the breath of the world, Eurus said, and we have come to warn you. Last came Zephyrus, the west wind, gentle and sweet as spring blossoms. We bring hope, Zephyrus said softly. But even hope must be tempered by strength. Zeus looked at them, 4 winds gathered around him, each carrying the weight of seasons and secrets. You come with news, Zeus said. What must I know? Boreas stepped closer. Cronus' shadow lingers still. The Titans are not silent. They remember. Notus's voice grew fierce. They seek to rise again, to claim the sky, to drown the earth. Zeus clenched his fists. But we are not alone, Zephyrus said. We are many, and so are you. The winds circled him, lifting leaves and dust in a wild dance. Listen, Zeus, Eurus said. You will need more than strength. You will need allies, wisdom, and courage. Zeus felt the power of the winds flowing through him, filling the space around his heart. I will gather what I must, Zeus said. I will stand, not as a conqueror, but as a guardian. The winds howled in approval, carrying his words to the farthest reaches of the mountain. And far below, in the shadows, eyes watched and waited. The storm was coming. Zeus descended from the windswept ridge with a new sense of purpose. The whispers of the 4 winds echoed in his mind. Warnings and promises, voices from the breath of the world itself. Yet amid the call to prepare for the rising shadows, a quiet curiosity burned inside him, a question that had followed him since his earliest days. What is the power that can shape the heavens and earth? He wondered aloud. Not just lightning or storms, but the strength to build and to protect. Amalthea watched him thoughtfully as they sat beside the mountain stream, its waters singing over smooth stones. "There is a place," she said, "hidden from mortal eyes and even some gods, a forge where the bones of the earth are bent and tempered. It is older than time and filled with secrets." Zeus leaned in, the light of the setting sun catching the golden seed at his side. "Where?" "Follow the river's song," Amalthea instructed, "through the forests to the deepest caves. There you will find Hephaestus' forge. But beware, what is forged there is not easily claimed." The next day, with a pack of supplies and the eagle chick soaring overhead, Zeus began his journey along the river's winding path. The forest thickened around him, the canopy blotting out the sky until only dappled light fell through. Strange creatures peeked from shadowed hollows, and the air thrummed with hidden life. Hours passed, then days, until the river narrowed, disappearing beneath a veil of mist that rose from a cavern mouth hidden by creeping vines and ancient trees. Zeus approached, heart pounding with a mix of excitement and caution. Inside, the air was thick with heat and the smell of molten metal. The cave walls glowed with veins of molten rock, and the sound of hammering echoed through the chambers. He moved deeper, guided by the rhythmic pounding. At last, he found the forge, a vast hall where sparks flew like stars and the air shimmered with the raw power of creation. At its center stood Hephaestus himself, the god of fire and craft, his arms moving tirelessly as he shaped a glowing blade. Hephaestus looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes at the sight of the young boy. "Who dares enter the forge unbidden?" Zeus stepped forward, steady despite the heat. "I am Zeus, son of Cronus and Rhea. I seek to learn the secret of your craft." The forge god studied him silently. Then, with a nod, he set down his hammer. "Many have sought power without understanding. Few seek wisdom." Zeus met his gaze. "I do not seek power to conquer, but to protect." Hephaestus smiled faintly. "Then listen well, child. The forge is more than fire and metal. It is the shaping of potential, the turning of chaos into order. Every spark is a choice. Every strike a purpose." He gestured to the glowing blade on the anvil. "This is a thunderbolt, the weapon of kings. It is made not just of fire, but of the earth's deepest strength and the sky's wildest fury. To wield it is to carry the weight of both." Zeus reached out, feeling the warmth and the power humming beneath the metal surface. "But remember," Hephaestus warned, "strength without control destroys. Power without heart corrupts. You must learn balance." Zeus nodded, understanding dawning like the first light of dawn. He would return to the mountain not just as a boy chasing storms, but as a guardian who shaped the future with hands and heart alike. The forge had spoken, and Zeus was ready to listen. After leaving the forge, Zeus felt the weight of responsibility settle deeper in his chest, but also a new flame, one fueled by purpose and resolve. He knew the path ahead would not be easy. The winds had warned him of the Titan's restlessness, and the forge had shown him the power of creation and control. Now, there was one last lesson he must learn before he could truly claim his place. "The woods will teach you what the sky and forge cannot," Amalthea told him as they prepared for their journey. "The whispering woods lie to the west, where ancient trees speak the language of the earth and shadows hold secrets. You must listen, not speak." Zeus felt a shiver as he looked toward the dense forest. The trees stood tall and dark, their branches woven together like fingers guarding a secret. With the eagle chick flying above as a sentinel, Zeus entered the woods. The air changed immediately, growing cooler, thick with the scent of moss and rain. Leaves rustled softly, but there was no wind. The silence was alive. As he walked deeper, the whispers began, not voices, but feelings, images flashing in his mind. The slow growth of roots underground, the endless patience of stone, the quiet passing of seasons. The woods did not rush. They waited. Zeus closed his eyes and let the forest speak. The trees told stories of endurance, of survival through storms and droughts, of hidden paths and ancient pacts. Suddenly, a soft voice, like the rustle of leaves, spoke within his mind. You carry the sky's fire, but do you hold the earth's patience? Zeus opened his eyes to see a figure emerging from the shadows, a dryad, her hair a cascade of leaves and bark, her eyes deep and calm like the forest itself. I am Melia, she said softly, guardian of these woods. Zeus bowed his head respectfully. I seek to understand balance. The winds and forge have shown me strength and power. Teach me the patience of the earth. Melia smiled gently. The earth listens long before it acts. It holds wounds and nurtures growth. You must learn to wait, to watch, to protect without destruction. She led him to an ancient oak, its trunk wide and scarred by centuries. This tree has survived storms and fire, yet it stands strong because it bends and heals. So must you. Zeus reached out, placing his hand on the rough bark, feeling the slow pulse of life beneath. In that moment, he understood that true strength was not just in storms or fire, but in enduring through time and change. As the sun dipped low, Melia gave him a gift, a small acorn glowing faintly with green light. Plant this when your time comes. It will grow into a symbol of your reign, a living promise of balance and life. Zeus nodded, the weight of the acorn light but full of meaning. He left the whispering woods with a new understanding. To be a god of the sky, he must also honor the earth. The eagle chick soared above, and the forest whispered behind him. Balance was the key. The sun was dipping low behind Mount Aegaeon as Zeus returned from the whispering woods, the glowing acorn safely tucked away. The lessons of the sky, forge, and earth had settled deep within him, but he sensed there was still one challenge ahead. One that would test not just his power or patience, but the very core of who he was. That night, beneath a tapestry of stars, a shadow detached itself from the darkness at the edge of the cave where Zeus slept. It moved silently, as if made of mist and forgotten fears. Zeus stirred, sensing a chill crawl across his skin. The air thickened. The eagle chick ruffled its feathers, hissing softly. Who's there? Zeus whispered, sitting up. From the shadows stepped a figure. Neither fully human nor divine, but something in between. Its eyes were pools of darkness, reflecting every doubt and fear Zeus had ever known. I am the trial of shadows, it said, voice low and echoing. I test those who seek to rule, for only by facing their own darkness can a true leader rise. Zeus swallowed hard, but he did not flee. Show me what I must face, he said, steady. The shadow moved closer, and the cave around them shifted into a series of visions. Scenes of betrayal, failure, and loneliness. He saw himself turning away from friends, making choices that hurt those he loved. He saw great storms caused by his anger, and silence where laughter once lived. He saw a throne surrounded by enemies, and himself alone. You fear this future, the shadow whispered. But it is not prophecy, it is a reflection. Zeus clenched his fists. I am not perfect, but I will not be ruled by fear or anger. The shadow swirled, dark tendrils reaching out, trying to pull him into despair. Will you let me consume you? It asked. No, Zeus said firmly. I will face you. I will learn from you. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply. Instead of fighting, he let the shadow surround him, feeling the cold touch but holding steady. Slowly, the darkness softened, revealing memories behind it, his mother's lullabies, Amalthea's warm hands, the eagle chick's bright eyes. The shadow smiled, fading into mist. "You have passed the trial," it said. "But remember, your shadow walks with you always. To lead is to embrace both light and dark." Zeus opened his eyes, the cave brightening. He rose, stronger than before. The trial of shadows was not an enemy, but a teacher. And Zeus was ready to rule, not just with power, but with wisdom and courage. The memory of the trial of shadows lingered in Zeus's mind like a fading storm. He had faced his inner darkness and emerged stronger, but the world beyond the mountain was vast, and new challenges awaited. The winds had spoken of titans stirring beneath the earth. Now, another voice called to him from the depths of the sea. One morning, as the sun spilled gold across the peaks, Zeus stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the endless blue. The waves below crashed with a mighty roar, carrying salt and mystery on the breeze. A figure emerged from the water. A tall, majestic god with hair like sea foam and eyes as deep as the ocean trenches. "Poseidon," Amalthea said softly, her voice tinged with reverence. "Brother of the sky, lord of the seas." Zeus watched as Poseidon rose fully from the waves, trident in hand, his presence commanding and wild. "Zeus," Poseidon said, his voice like thunder rolling over the surf. "The earth shakes with unrest. The titans remember. The seas grow restless. We must stand together." Zeus nodded, feeling the weight of his brother's words. "What must we do?" Poseidon extended his hand. "A pact. To unite sky and sea, to protect the world from the shadows that seek to return." Zeus hesitated, then grasped Poseidon's hand firmly. The air shimmered with power, and the sea calmed as if honoring their bond. "We will face this together," Zeus promised. In the days that followed, Zeus and Poseidon met often, learning from each other's domains. The wild freedom of the sea and the boundless reach of the sky. Their bond grew, a bridge between worlds. Yet beneath the waves, old powers stirred, watching and waiting. The pact was forged not just in words, but in trust. And as the sun set over the horizon, casting a fiery glow across sea and sky, Zeus knew his journey was far from over. But with his brother at his side, he was no longer alone. The days following the Pact of the Seas were filled with lessons and revelations, but Zeus knew that to truly command the forces of the cosmos, he needed to understand not only the sky and the sea, but the blazing fire that burns at the heart of creation. One evening, as the stars began to twinkle above, Zeus found himself drawn to a clearing near the mountain's base. There, a solitary figure stood by a flickering flame, Hestia, goddess of the hearth, her presence warm and steady. "Why do you come here, young Zeus?" she asked, her voice gentle like the crackling fire. "I seek to know the fire that sustains life, that warms the heart, not just the fire of storms or forge," Zeus replied. Hestia smiled softly. "The fire within is different. It is patience, care, and the quiet strength to nurture. Without it, all else burns to ash." She gestured to the hearth, where embers glowed softly. Fire can destroy, but it can also create warmth, light, and comfort. To rule wisely, you must carry both. Zeus knelt beside her, feeling the heat radiate, steady and calm. As night deepened, Hestia taught him to tend the fire, how to coax it to grow without consuming all, how to shield it from the harsh winds. "You must guard the fire in your soul," she said, "for it is your light in darkness." Zeus closed his eyes, imagining the fire within as a steady flame, glowing brighter with each lesson learned. When he opened them, Hestia was gone, but the warmth remained. That night, as the mountains slept, Zeus dreamed of flames weaving through the stars, threads of light binding the heavens together. He understood now, the fire within was the heart of balance, the gentle power that held the storms, seas, and earth in harmony. With this knowledge, Zeus felt ready to face the trials ahead. for power without care was nothing. The mountain night stretched vast and silent, a canvas studded with countless stars. Zeus lay awake beneath the celestial tapestry, the lessons of earth, fire, sea, and sky weaving together in his mind like a cosmic melody. But his journey was far from over. The stars themselves seemed to call him forth, whispering of destinies beyond the mountains, beyond even the gods. One night, as the moon cast a silver glow over the peaks, Zeus felt a gentle tug deep within his chest. A summons he could not ignore. Rising, he climbed to the summit, where the world fell away beneath his feet, and the heavens unfolded in breathtaking splendor. There, among the ancient stones, a circle of shimmering figures awaited him, the stars personified, celestial beings of light and mystery. Their forms flickered like flames, radiant and ethereal. Zeus, the brightest among them, spoke, a figure named Astrius, guardian of dusk and dawn. The cosmos holds many secrets, and the balance you seek depends upon the harmony of all things seen and unseen. Zeus stepped forward, awe and determination blending in his gaze. "What must I learn from you?" "Each star," Astrius explained, "is a beacon of light born from the fire of creation. We hold the memories of time, the paths of fate, and the promise of what is yet to come. To lead, you must understand the vastness of existence." The stars circled around Zeus, their light weaving patterns in the sky, constellations unfolding like stories told in shimmering threads. "Look beyond the present," Astrius urged. "See the web that connects all beings, all powers. Your reign will stretch beyond the earth, the seas, and the storms. It will reach the stars themselves." Zeus lifted his gaze to the heavens, feeling the weight and wonder of the universe. "Will I be ready?" he whispered. "You will," the stars promised, their voices like the soft hum of the night. "But only if you carry the lessons of balance, strength, patience, and heart." As dawn painted the sky with hues of rose and gold, the stars faded into the morning light, leaving Zeus alone with a heart full of dreams and the courage to shape his destiny. The mountain stood silent witness, and the world held its breath. Zeus was no longer just a boy. He was becoming the storm. The mountain was bathed in the gentle light of dawn, the horizon painted in hues of pink and gold that promised a new beginning. Zeus stood at the peak, gazing out over the lands he had come to know so well. The forests whispered behind him, the sea stretched endlessly to one side, and the vast sky above cradled the fading stars. Every lesson, every trial, every moment had led him here. The boy who once hid from destiny was no more. Before him lay the dawn of his reign, the birth of a new era. But even as the sun rose, a shadow lingered in Zeus's mind, the weight of the past and the trials yet to come. His father, Cronus, still ruled the heavens, a tyrant who devoured his own children to keep power. The fear, the hunger, the darkness of that rule was a heavy burden. Yet Zeus had grown, tempered by earth's patience, the fire's heart, the storm's fury, the sea's depth, and the star's wisdom. Now, he was ready to face his destiny. Behind him, the eagle chick, once small and vulnerable, soared with wings wide and strong, a living symbol of his own growth. Amalthea, her eyes shimmering with pride and quiet sorrow, stood beside him. "The time has come, Zeus," she said softly. "You must claim your place and free those who suffer under Cronus's shadow." Zeus nodded, his heart steady. "I will not fail." With a deep breath, he stepped down from the mountain peak, the world unfolding before him like a vast canvas awaiting his touch. As he descended, the sky darkened and clouds gathered, mirroring the storm inside him. But this time, the storm was calm, focused, a swirling force ready to reshape the world. At the base of the mountain, the air grew thick with anticipation. The Titans, ancient and formidable, stirred beneath the earth, sensing the shift. Cronus's throne loomed in the distance, a towering monument of iron and shadow, where the old god ruled with fear. Zeus raised his hand, calling forth the winds. The eagle screamed, circling high above as a herald of change. Brothers, sisters, Zeus's voice echoed through the valleys, the time of fear is over. The chains of the past will break, and a new dawn will rise. From the depths of the earth, Poseidon emerged, trident shining with the ocean's fury. Beside him, Hades stepped forth, his eyes dark but resolute. Together, they formed a circle of power, the children of Cronus united not by fear, but by hope. The battle was fierce. The earth shook, skies roared, and seas crashed with wild abandon. Lightning cleaved the darkness, fire blazed with unyielding light, and the very foundations of the world trembled. Yet Zeus fought not just with power, but with the wisdom of his journey. The patience learned in the woods, the fire of the hearth, the calm of the stars. As the final clash approached, Zeus faced Cronus himself, the tyrant whose shadow had loomed over him his entire life. Cronus laughed, a sound like breaking stone. "You are still a child, unready for the throne." But Zeus stood tall, the storm gathering in his eyes. "I am no longer afraid." With a roar, Zeus unleashed the full force of the storm within. Lightning striking with fierce precision, thunder shaking the heavens. The battle raged, fierce and desperate, but Zeus's power was tempered with heart and balance. At last, Cronus fell, defeated not just by strength, but by the hope and unity of his children. The sky cleared, and a brilliant light poured over the land. Zeus stood victorious, but not alone. With Poseidon and Hades by his side, he claimed the throne of Olympus not as a tyrant, but as a guardian. The eagle soared higher than ever, its cry echoing freedom. The world breathed anew, and as the dawn of Olympus broke, Zeus felt the quiet strength of the earth beneath his feet, the warmth of the fire within, the endless sky above, and the boundless sea beside him. He was no longer just a boy. He was a god, the king of gods, and his reign had only just begun. Thank you for listening to this light story. If you enjoyed this lovely tale, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Light Story Club will be here for when you want to listen to another chronicle to help you rest. Goodbye for now.